Danish sculptor Bjørn Okholm Skaarup lives part-time in New York, part-time in Florence. His sculptures are always cast in a small foundry in Florence, using the same techniques as the great bronze masters of the Renaissance, and before them Hellenistic masters, the Cera Persa or the lost wax.
When I moved here, I changed my style and my aesthetics almost completely, because Italy and Florence especially, but a lot of Italy is like one big open art museum where you can constantly allow yourself to be inspired and learn new things from the bronze masters that have left behind pieces both in the churches and in open squares. I'm constantly taught new things by just walking around in the city and looking at some of these outside sculptures that have been standing there for 5 centuries now. Going into some of the museums and the churches, you constantly learn new things, you constantly learn how you can improve your skills a little bit. I think Italy has really remade me as a sculptor. I've been sculpting since I was like 12 years old, so it's 3 decades now. But a lot of the things I've learned over the last 10 years, I've learned because I happen to live here. I'm no longer particularly inspired by the whole Nordic post-war giant brutalist sculptures. I love it here, and I don't think I could do what I do in any other foundry than the one I use here in Florence. I love the whole Italian tradition of manufacturing skills, of like exclusive, unlimited, uncompromising quality. And I totally admire all my friends and co-workers out at the foundry who helped me with the whole metal cast part of sculpture making.
Inspired by classical mythology, the Renaissance, as well as American pop art, Bjørn Skaarup sculptures are often depicted as surreal encounters between nature and culture. Animals given human characteristics, comments on global issues, all of it wrapped into unpretentiousness and humor. Constantly exploring the bronze medium in pursuit of new forms and funny details, his work tends to balance on a light foundation in order for the fat hippo to appear as vibrant as possible.
I've instead done some more light-hearted themes and often rooted in the great classical tradition. Timeless subjects like the 5 senses, the 4 elements, the seasons, the continents, the decline and fall, rise of empires, etc. And always by using animals as allegories of something else than just mere animals. In the medieval and Renaissance bestiary tradition, animals were often attributed with a lot of, given a lot of attributes that they actually do not have, but which makes it very fun to read old manuals about the beaver or the lion or whatever. They're not only animals that live out in nature, they're also symbols of certain things. For instance, the lion is the king of all the animals. He plays the same role as the sun does among the heavenly orbits, or the heart does as the vital organ of the body, or gold does among the metals. So there are all these correspondences that I find very interesting. The Hermin is like a knight, a chivalrous knight who throws himself into crazy enterprises, like a kind of Don Quixote-like character. So that's why I depicted him as a kind of like St. George-like character. And then, of course, the animals have always symbolized empires. We all know about the Russian bear, the American eagle, the British bulldog, the German eagle, the Spanish bull, and all these. So I thought it could be fun to pile them up as like a pile of decomposing bodies, because many of these empires have long ago collapsed, and the only one still standing, more or less, is the American eagle. And then on the back you have the Chinese dragon coming crawling up from behind as the future challenger.
Intrigued by one of the most influential sculptures of all time, the Laocoon of the 1st century BC, Bjørn follows in the footsteps of Titian, who made ironic appropriations of the work. As a comment on the ongoing debate between Renaissance and classical physicians, Andreas Vesalius and Galen, on the similarities between primate and human anatomy, Bjørn creates his own reinterpretation of the Laocoon.
So one of my favorite, and I think any sculptor's favorite sculpture, is the Laocoon, which was found in the peak of the Italian Renaissance in 1506 in Rome, while Michelangelo was there, and everyone could immediately see this must be the Laocoon, mentioned by Pliny already in the 1st century AD as one of the masterpieces of Rome. So what an incredible luck to stumble over it 1500 years later. And everyone agreed that this was like a masterpiece, like no one has ever seen it before. The total mastery of anatomy, the expressions of these three figures who are suffering a violent death. Already in the 16th century, the workshop of Titian made an ironical sketch of the sculpture, where instead of 3 human beings being devoured by the snakes, they have been turned into 3 monkeys. And the story behind that engraving is a little complex, because from Titian's workshop 2 years earlier, you had gotten the totally amazing, groundbreaking anatomical illustrations of Vesalius, which redefined everything we thought we knew about the human body. But it also was met with a lot of criticism by contemporary anatomists and medical doctors, who wanted instead to rely completely on the classical sources, and Galen in particular. The problem was that Galen had only dissected other mammals than humans, and especially monkeys. So he was wrong in a lot of little ways. So Titian's workshop, in defense of Vesalius, said that if you really think that Galen was right in everything he said, then contemporary people must have looked like monkeys as well back then.
The foundry where Bjørn's sculptures are cast is located right outside Florence in the small village of Cascine del Riccio. The method supplied follows the ancient art of casting, which has been used for thousands of years to produce objects of bronze. Initially, the artist creates a full-sized model of the sculpture in clay.
So I think most sculptures of figurative work start with the heads, and I invest a lot of time in getting them perfect. Back in my American studio, I can sit for months and work on tiny little fine details and wrinkles and trying to get the heads right. So much of the personality of the pieces are placed in the faces and in the heads. So primary goal in the initial phase is to get them perfect.
Secondly, a mold is made from the clay pattern, either from plaster, silicone or similar rubber-like materials, which is then stabilized by a plaster jacket of several pieces. Once a mold is obtained, a hollow wax is then cast from the mold. The wax copy of the sculpture can be refined for further enhancement of details. The complete wax structure is placed in a new kind of mold or shell, which is heated in a kiln until the wax runs out and all free moisture is removed. The slow evaporation of the wax leaves behind a void for the fluent bronze. One or more wax spruces are added to conduct the molten metal into all parts of the sculpture. Once the bronze has cooled off and the external ceramic clay is removed, it's time for the final process of aftercare. Sprues, vents and cavities are removed and all parts of the sculpture are welded together. After the right patina is added, using different kinds of acids and fire, a final decoration is sometimes applied before the sculpture is finally complete. After yet another exquisite meal in the local cantina next to the foundry, it's time to ask Bjørn about the future.
I have an American wife now, and I now live and work mostly in the US, which is also a great source of inspiration for me. I love pop art and I love comic books. I love animations more than anything else almost, which are great old American art forms. So maybe that's my other big source of inspiration. The old Italian Renaissance masters and some of the pop art especially of the 20th century. So I think I'll just continue with what I'm doing now. Maybe at some point I would love to mix the static bronze sculpture more with animation, because I love the idea that they would actually be able to move around and do wonderful things as well.